We have another wonderful chiddush today in our learning in Zevachim. We're going to be learning an issue around Hilchot Tumah, matters of spiritual contamination. And from those laws of Tumah, we can gain a lot of insight into the general process of healing and repair. Although the halachot of Tumah are very specific to those things, we can nevertheless gain certain insights into the nature of healing and repair. And sometimes, even after one's done everything one needs to heal or to repair, you still need to hit refresh. Sometimes you're working on a page on the internet and something gets stuck and you fix what was wrong and the page is still not working right. You've got to refresh. Sometimes it's not enough just to fix the problem, you've got to start again. Sometimes you've got to reboot the computer, you've got to start up again. In life, it's the same thing. Sometimes you have to reboot. What does that mean and what does that look like? Renewal, טיבול יום, Zevachim Daf Yud Zayin Amud Aleph. טיבול Yom is a concept that we have in the Torah, as we'll see, which is that if a person becomes tameh with one of the serious forms of tumah, that's ava tumah or rishon tumah, one of the more serious forms of tumah, of spiritual contamination, then even after the person has done everything he or she has to do in order to remove the tumah, in order to cleanse for that contamination, including going to the mikveh, they still, for certain requirements, need to wait until the end of that day. So if they go to the mikveh, the whole cleansing process is complete. They finish it on Wednesday at 3 o'clock, they go to the mikveh, they still got to wait, they're not fully cleansed until shkia, until sunset that evening. And that's called the טיבול yom, the period of time between going to the mikveh and the sun setting. That person is called the טיבול yom. He's done the tevilah, he's gone to the mikveh, but the day is still the same day. And we learn in our Mishnah that the טיבול yom, a kohen who is a טיבול yom, who does one of the avodot of the korban, the avodah is disqualified. Ask the Gemara, טיבול yom minalan. Where do we know from that in this period of time between going to the mikveh and the sun setting, that if a kohen performs an action, an avodah, a practice of a service of the korban during that period of time, that avodato psula doesn't work? Where do we get that? Tanya says the Gemara, we have it from a brisa, and that is Rabbi Simoy, where Rabbi Simoy says, this comes from Sanhedrin, Daf Pei Gimel, where we had it, and Rabbi Simoy says, Remez l'tibul yom shim avad chilel minayin. Where do we know from? Where is there a suggestion in the Torah that if a tibul yom, this person who's in between time, performs a service on the korban, that his chilel, he's spoiled the korban, minayin? Talmud lomar kadoshim yiyu. We learn that from the posik of kadoshim yiyu v'lo yechalelu. That's a posik in the Torah that imenu inyan l'tamei denafik mi v'yanazru t'nei inyan l'tibul yom. That posik of v'yanazru can't be talking about a general situation of a person who becomes tameh. It must be talking therefore about a lower level of tumah, and we apply it to the principle of a טיבול yom. So Rabbi Simoy has a specific posuk of kadoshim yiyu v'lo yechalelu, from which he learns that a טיבול yom is mechalel the avodah, that he spoils the act of bringing a korban that he performs. Asks Tosfos, why do I need a special posuk for that? At the end of the day, if he hasn't yet finished the process, he was tameh. We know that he was tameh. He was tameh with an ava tumah or rishon tumah. He was seriously tameh. And the Torah tells us what has to be done for that tumah to be removed. One of the things the Torah tells us specifically is you've got to wait till the end of the day. And it's not yet the end of the day, so he's still tameh. Why do I need a special posuk to tell me? Says Tosfos, Tema tebuk lemi diktiv gabi טיבול yom uva hashemesh v'taher. We have another posuk in Vayikra Chaf Beis, uva hashemesh, where the Torah says, and when the sun sets, v'taher, he becomes tahor. V'achar yochal min hakodshim ki lachmohu. Then he can eat truma, after the sun has set. So we know that until the sun has set, he's not fully tahor, that he has not been completely purified. Why is that posuk not enough for us to know that there's a time element in addition to all the activities he's got to do, including going to the mikveh? There's still a time element, and until the time element is done, he isn't fully tahor. So I don't need a special posuk to tell me, why does Rabbi Simoi need the posuk of Kedoshim Yiyu v'lo yechalalu? Asks Tosfos. Answers Rabbeinu Chaim in the Tosfos, a technical reason that without the posuk of V'yan Hazru, it wouldn't be clear what Uvah Hashemish v'taher means. So the Gemara says in Brochas v'taher could mean various different things. It's only because we've got the posuk of Kedoshim Yiyu v'lo yechalalu that I know that Uvah Hashemish v'taher means that this man is not fully purified until the sun sets. It's not talking about the day is not over. That's one of the ways of understanding. Uvah Hashemish v'taher, the Gemara says in Brochas, could mean the sun will set and the day is done. No, we learn from this posuk of Kedoshim Yiyu v'lo yechalalu, we learn that when it says the sun is sets v'taher, it means until the sun sets, the person is not tahor. After the sunset, the person becomes tahor. Be that as it may, once again, it's very clear from even the way Rabbeinu Chaim answers, that essentially we're learning it from Uvah Hashemish v'taher. That's really where we're learning it from. It's just that Uvah Hashemish v'taher is ambiguous. It could be referring to the day, or it could be referring to the person. Comes the posuk of Kedoshim Yiyu v'lo yechalalu and teaches us how to translate the posuk of Uvah Hashemish v'taher. But at the end of the day, we learn it from Uvah Hashemish v'taher, which seems to imply that this tumah that this person has from 3 o'clock on Wednesday to sunset on Wednesday, that tumah is a continuation of the earlier tumah. It's not a new tumah. It's a continuation of the earlier. It's been tameh all the time. And until the sun sets, the tumah is not completely resolved, which also seems to be the way the Rambam understands it. As the Rambam says on the second page of the source sheet, "V'chein tameh shetaval v'avad kodem sheyariv shimsho avodato psula." If a person who was tameh, a kohen was tameh, and he served in the temple in one of the avodot of the Beis Hamikdash of the korban before sunset of the day he went to the mikveh, his avodah, his service is pasul, it's disqualified. V'chayav misu b'dei shemayim, and that's a capital offense b'dei shemayim. Not a beis din is not put to death, but God treats it as a capital offense. Shneimar v'lo yechalulu shem Elokeim, and he brings the verse that Rabbi Simoi brings. מפי השמועה למדו שזו אזהרה לטיבול יום שעבד שעדיין טמא הוא. You see from here, says the Rambam, that he is still tameh. Clearly the Rambam seems to be saying that the tumah of Wednesday 3 o'clock until sunset on Wednesday night is a continuation of the earlier tumah. Shneimar, as it says, Uvah Hashemish v'taher, and now he brings the other posuk. He skips to the other posuk. Michlal sha'adayin lo tiher. So you can see from the second pasuk that he's not yet fully tahor. So why does he have to bring the second pasuk all together? We'll see in a moment. Aval mechusa kippurim shavadaf epishavadato psula v'chel harei patu. We won't go into the mechusa kippurim. He explains the case of Mishnah. Why do you need Uvah Hashemish v'taher? Latet tam lama chiluk mi mechusa kippurim. To explain why there's a miso b'dei shemayim, heavenly death, for the person who is a טיבול יום. He's between the time of the going to the mikveh and the time of the sunset, whereas a mechusa kippurim, somebody who hasn't brought his korban, which is a different kind of in-between status, isn't as, although he also messes up his korban, but he's not also b'dei shemayim, he's not misa b'dei shemayim. The reason is because of the posuk of Uvah Hashemish v'taher, that until the sun sets, that original tumah is still in place. We treat him as if he's still tameh. So clearly from the words of the Rambam and from our understanding of the Gemara, as Tosfos and Rabbeinu Chaim are explaining it, the real issue is Uvah Hashemish v'taher. Until the sun sets, he remains tameh as he was to begin with. Yet strangely, in the Sefer HaMitzvahs, the Rambam counts these as two separate mitzvahs. Mitzvah 75, Ayin Hei, who is, he's a Kohen Tameh Me'avod, that a Kohen who is Tameh can't perform one of the services. As it says via Nazru, that's one mitzvah. We understand. And then mitzvah Lota Se Ayin Vav 76 is she's Ahera Kohen טיבול Yom Me'avod Afapi Shetiherad She'arev Shimsho. And there's a second mitzvah. Even though he's gone to the mikveh and he's done everything he has to do, The sun is not yet set, so he's not allowed to serve in the Beis Hamikdash. He can't do one of the avodot. So here the Rambam bifurcates it into two separate mitzvot lo ta'aseh. In the piece of Rambam that we learned in Hilchos Bias Hamikdash, the Rambam seems to be saying that this is a continuation of the earlier state of Tumah. The Tumah is not complete until the sun sets. But he gives it as it's a mitzvah of its own. That quite apart from the prohibition of a Kohen Tameh serving, there is another prohibition of a Kohen who was Tameh, has cleansed himself, gone to the mikveh, but the sun is not yet set. He too cannot perform an avodah in the Beis HaMikdash. If we learn the Sefer HaChinuch usually bases himself on the Rambam. The wording of the Sefer HaChinuch is interesting. So he brings the din in mitzvah Reish Samachay, Shelo Yishamesh Kohen טיבול Yom Ad Shi'ariv Shimsho, Ve'af al pi shetaval v'tiher tzarich ha'ariv shemesh. Even though he's gone to the mikveh, you've still got to have the sun setting, says the Chinuch. Lefi shehu Kesheni l'tuma ad shi'ariv shimsho. An interesting word the Chinuch uses, because he is like a sheni l'tuma. Sheni l'tuma is somebody who has been touched, who has come into contact with a rishon l'tuma. A first level tuma touches another person or food or whatever the situation is, that becomes a sheni l'tuma, second grade tuma. And this person who has gone to the mikveh but the sun hasn't yet set, he doesn't say he is sheni l'tuma. He says he's kesheni l'tuma, implying it's not the same tumah, it's not an extension of the same tumah, it's something additional. And he says further on, this is not the same tumah as there was before. So the Chinuch seems to be working with the Rambam, not the way with the Rambam in the Sefer HaMitzvahs, that there's two different tumos. There is the tumah, there's the contamination of the initial one, which ends with the tevilah. I reference in the footnote, the Rambam's son says clearly Tvilo ends Tumah. What happens afterwards is a different thing, but Tvilo is the end of Tumah. And it would seem so from the Rambam in Sefer HaMitzvahs. And yet, in the Hilchos Bias HaMikdash, the Rambam implies that there's a continuation. And then the Chinuch goes on in explaining the mitzvah. He says a Kohen is a shaliach between the Jewish people and Hashem. And because his korbanot have to be accepted before the Ribono Shel Olam, al ken chova alav liot naki haguf betachlit be'et havodah. When he serves, his body has to be spiritually pure. V'ulai ruach hatuma lo yavor legamri me'alav ad ha'arev hashemesh. Now he goes back to the idea, maybe the tumor that he had before hasn't fully been removed, even though he's gone to the mikveh until the sun sets. And the Ribono Shel Olam knows what these measures are when it comes and when it goes. So what is going on here? Is this a continuation of the same tumah, or is this a new tumah? Is this a different tumah? What I want to suggest to you is that tumah should be looked at as layers, not just as binary. It is or you're tumah or you're not tumah. There can be layers of tumah. The one layer of tumah is removed with the going to the mikveh, as the Rebbe Avrom ben Arambam says. The Rambam's son says there's no question that mikveh removes tumah. That removes a layer of tumah, but there are situations where under that layer of tumah, there's a layer of a different tumah. As the Rambam says, two different mitzvahs, it's a layer of two different tumahs. Yes, the Rambam says in Hilchos Bias HaMikdash, she'adayin tamehu, yes, he is still tameh, because you've removed one layer, but the other layer is still there. If you think of it in layers, this whole thing becomes understandable. That a טיבול yom is somebody whose first layer has been peeled away by the mikveh, but he's left with a second layer that can only be peeled away by a time factor, by the beginning of the next day, then that can be peeled away. What is the nature of the second layer of tumah? We need to understand it clearly, that sometimes a person has negative experiences. He's done wrong things or he's experienced bad things, and he goes through therapy or he works on himself or he does tshuva, and he works through all these things. Sometimes there's still a need for a new start. You'll have people who they'll emigrate, they'll go to another country. They'll take a new job. They'll get divorced from their wives and marry somebody else. So people sometimes do things that I can't do it in this environment. I need a new start. Although I've cleansed it, it's all gone, but I need to leave it behind somewhere. And just as one can leave something behind by changing physical space, so you can leave something behind by changing time. We've talked about the relationship between time and space in Kodshim, and the time is like a dimension of space. It works exactly the same way. So just as sometimes somebody will want to leave something behind, move into a new home, go to a new city, leave their shul and go to a new shul, start learning in a new yeshiva. There are things that people sometimes need to do to start afresh. It's not enough that I've cleansed myself of what was. I need to hit refresh. I've actually got to start anew. That's the nature of Harav Shemesh. A new day is that power. A new day allows you, if you've done the tshuva before, a new day allows you to start again. That's another step in the process. That's what a new day does. There's a lot that's written about the importance of doing tshuva before one goes to sleep, and that the Rav Kook talks and others about how that changes the quality of the sleep from a spiritual perspective. Not only that, but I think doing tshuva, yes, if you haven't done it before you go to sleep is a good time, but the right time to do tshuva is before shkia, before sunset, to go through the day, because that's the end of the day. The end of the day is not when you go to sleep. The end of the day is when the sun sets. Before sunset, do tshuva. Go through the day in your mind quickly and do tshuva for anything you've done wrong. And then you move into a new day. And that's why Shas starts with the Mishnah, the very first Mishnah of Shas. Me'ei matai korim et Shema ba'arvin. When do you say Kriya Shema at Arvis time? Why do you start with Kriya Shema of Ma'ariv? Is that the mitzvah to start with, of all the mitzvahs? Ma'ariv time, when do you start? The timing of Kriya Shema of Ma'ariv. And the Mishnah answers very strangely. The Mishnah doesn't say Shkia. The Mishnah doesn't say Tzesek Kechovim, nightfall, sunset. It says Misha'ah she'akohanim nichnasim le'echol b'trumatam. The same moment that a Kohen rids himself of the tumah completely. The second layer. The first layer, you rid yourself with all the activities you need to do. And if it's a tumah of chet, if it's a tumah of sin, you rid it by tshuva. But you still need to restart. The opportunity to restart is Bizman she'akohanim nichnasim le'echol b'trumatam, that precious moment of sunset. The time when we're all too busy to even stop and think, and all of a sudden we notice, it's got dark already, especially now we get into the winter, and it's all of a sudden it got dark already. We've missed the moment. And the moment is not to go outside and see the beautiful sunset. That's fine, that's beautiful, but that's not the moment. The moment is reset. This is the moment I can shed all the negativity of the day and start a new day. Start a new day, not when I wake up in the morning. Start a new day when the sun sets, so that my nighttime is fresh. The things I'm thinking about, how I spend my evening is fresh. How I go to sleep to prepare myself. I don't fall into bed out of fatigue from yesterday, from the day that's just passed. I go to sleep in preparation for getting up for the Mishnah Yomis, for the Matmonim, for Shachris. That when I'm going to sleep, that's what I'm going to sleep. I've shed myself of all the negativity. I've removed the first layer through tshuva, in the case of tumah, through going to the mikveh and the other activities I've needed to do. I'm left with one more layer. How do I remove the last layer? By hitting refresh, by starting again with the shkia, with the sun setting. And that's the meaning and the understanding of טיבול Yom. With that, we can understand the Gemara according to Tosfos and the difference between the Rambam in Hilchos Bias HaMikdash and in the Sefer HaMitzvos.